Hello, hello. Welcome to Big Garden Birdwatch and Beyond. Lovely sounds in the background there of curlews, something you don't get in your garden. As this is a Zoom webinar, you won't be able to turn on your video or your microphone. You will be able to ask us questions using the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We do have some time allocated for Q&A at the end of the session, and if we don't get time to come back to you, we'll do our best to respond after the session. There's no chat function enabled for this event. If you have any technical issues, then we do have the events team here on standby. However, for more specific Zoom issues, they may not be able to always assist. Now, we've just enjoyed really lovely Big Garden Birdwatch weekend, and we're going to be chatting about that today. I'm just going to introduce our guests. We have Adrian Thomas, who is our wildlife gardening expert. Hello, Adrian.
Hi, Jamie. Good to be here.
Hello. Yes, thank you. And Indy Keemore Green, RSPB ambassador and youth council member, live from Sherwood Forest. Hello, Indy.
Hello, hello.
We have Alistair McKee from our local groups team. Hello, Alistair.
Hello there.
And we'll be coming back to all our speakers shortly and to go into a bit more detail. Now, essentially, in this session, we're going to be looking back and reflecting on Big Garden Birdwatch, what we've all seen. We're going to be looking forwards to what you can expect to enjoy over the next few months in the year, giving tips on wildlife gardening, talking about local groups. And if you've got any questions about Big Garden Birdwatch or nature in general, we'll do our best to answer them. Just pop them in the Q&A box. Now, first of all, I'm going to go over to Indy. I think this is really exciting to actually have someone live in Sherwood Forest. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Actually, it's a really lovely nature reserve. Indy, how did you get on during Big Garden Birdwatch?
It was probably, I think, one of my best ever. It was, I think, probably the most accurate count I've had of the garden birds. Basically, what I mean is they all turned up, which was the first. And yeah, it was it was really nice. And it's just every year, my favorite thing about it is just the fact that you've got no excuses but to just sit and enjoy for an hour. You're not allowed to do anything else, just this. And it's just like, no, I'm doing Big Garden Birdwatch. Don't talk to me. I'm doing this. And so it's really nice. I just love it every year. But yeah, some really good highlights this year. I think one of my favorites, I've never seen in the garden before, was a black cat.
Oh, let's get the black
And
cap
that
up on
was
the
really
screen.
exciting. Oh, um, but yeah, black cap I'd never seen. There we go. There's a lovely male, and it was a male black cap. And I've been chatting to one of my friends who'd had a black cap in their garden recently, and I thought, oh, that's that's cool. I'd love to get a black cap in winter because a lot of the ones that we get in the winter in the UK are from Central Europe. And yeah, during the Big Garden Birdwatch, there we were, and I was like, what's that bird there? It's looking pretty grey looking. And yeah, got my bins on, and it was a male black cap, and that was really, really exciting. And I haven't seen it since. It literally turned up for the hour, and that was amazing.
And what did it?
Another
What did
really
it? What drew it in? What was it feeding on?
It's feeding on everything. It started on the sunflowers, and then it went over to the peanuts, and then it sort of flew down towards the house a little bit, and then it had a little sniff at the at some of the suet. Didn't like that, so it went back up to the top, went on the peanuts again, then back on the sunflowers, and then yeah, just hung around for a little bit, and then left again.
That's
So
brilliant. Let's
yeah.
just have a look at the female black cap because very
Hmm.
similar birds, except
Oh, look
the
at that.
black cap is swapped to a kind of chestnut color. Now, in a previous session, we did talk a little bit about black caps and how sometimes when you get a black cap come into your garden during the winter, it sort of takes over and it will drive other birds from the feeders. Did you experience any of that?
Absolutely. So I was talking to a friend of mine who I mentioned who had a black cap in his garden. He said that it dominates, the feeders the whole time it's there. And as soon as this one turned up, it was an absolute thug. It was just beating up all the great tits, all the goldfinches, birds that are normally pretty astute, pretty dominant on the feeders. And it was like, no, I've been here 5 minutes, but this is all mine now, chaps. This is mine. I don't know what you're feeding. So yeah, exactly that. It was exactly that, which was really funny. But yeah, lovely female there as well. Really nice.
And you also had there were two other birds we're going to mention. So what else did you get?
So I've been trying for ages. We've only recently put feeders up in this garden, and I've been trying for so long to try and get some finches in. And a few weeks ago, we finally had the first goldfinch in. As you can see here, such lovely birds. A friend of mine, Lucy Lapwing, always describes them as jam faces because it looks like they've dipped their head in the jam pot. So that was really exciting. We had six of those. That was really good. And another really exciting finch was the green finch. And we saw these when we first moved there. and then it was about 2 years ago, and they completely disappeared. And then we had one turn up, literally on the Big Garden Birdwatch again. It was just a single one. Similar sort of story as the black cap, and it was there. So that was really exciting. So it was good. All in all, it was very good.
A good day was had by all. Yeah, we had a greenfinch as well, so we didn't get very many species. I think we only had about 5 or 6 species, but the greenfinch was a highlight because they are scarce now. I don't know if are they red listed, Indy? I can't remember, but they're not. They're certainly not as common as they used to be.
No, definitely. And there's a lot of again, good tip, which I'm sure other people might cover later on. But yeah, there's a disease that's very easily transferred between wood pigeons and greenfinches if they come in contact with, basically on the same surfaces. So really important to keep those surfaces clean. Um, bird feeders and bird tables and things like that. So I think that's had a big effect on greenfinches recently. Because I definitely don't see that very many anymore. The most I see them are not in gardens at all. It's out in the woods with, flocks of brambling or hawfinch, nothing.
Yeah.
I think from what I've seen in this area, definitely stopped associating with feeders or just know that it's a bit risky maybe. But yeah, so I was very excited to see that, and I'll be cleaning my feeders even more thoroughly than I already thoroughly was now to make sure that that greenfinch is all right.
Fantastic. Thank you, Indy. I'll come back to you shortly because I want to hear a bit more about Sherwood Forest and also about what else we can be looking forward to in the nature calendar. I'm going to ask if Claire from our events team would like to pop up now because I know Claire also did the Big Garden Birdwatch. Claire, are you there? How did you get
Yeah.
on?
Mine was not as great as Indy's. Mine was actually quite disappointing. All our birds disappeared just for the weekend. They just all disappeared. Yeah, so I didn't get many. I got a couple of carrion crows, a wood pigeon, and a jackdaw as well. And that was my whole count. Usually we have a whole flock of starlings and sparrows, and a resident robin, but they haven't been seen for a few weeks now. They've moved off elsewhere, I think.
It's what people often say, isn't it, after Big Garden Bird, which is like, I don't know, Adrian will probably say the same. We had the same experience with starlings arriving just after we finished our count. But it does often seem to be the way. But what we always tell people is that all that data still counts. Even if it's not what you would normally get, or there was bird missing, or even if you see nothing, still really important. And I'm sure you've submitted your results, haven't you, Claire?
Yes, I did.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Claire. Now, of course, you must, do remember to send your results in. It's really, really important. And we'll make sure we put that link in the chat so that you remember. In fact, I will make sure our team have got it on standby now to post it in the chat. Just noticing actually on the Big Garden Birdwatch page on the website, it's been really good this year because you can follow how everything's doing roughly. So bear in mind that the stats that we're showing on this web page are basically what people have been inputting live onto the website. There doesn't count everything people are going to send us by post or results people are going to enter later on. But I can see that over 6 million, nearly 7 million birds have been seen. House sparrow is still top of the charts, but it looks like there might have been a change in the top 10 with great tip moving upwards slightly, but we'll know in the next couple of months, and we normally will release the final results come April time. Really interesting to follow that. I'm going to go over to Adrian now. Adrian, you're going to tell us what you did see, what you would have, and what you would have liked to have seen, I think.
I had a great garden bird watch. I flung open the curtains first thing in the morning to find that there was a heron sat in the pond. And even though that has no chance of making it into the top 10 whatsoever, I thought that is going to be the start of my garden bird watch. That's the hour I'm going to do in order to get heron for the first time ever on my bird watch list. So I got 19 species and I got 50 birds within those 19 species. I should probably explain that is my garden behind me in the picture. I'm very lucky to have a large garden, but I am right in the middle of suburbia. I've got a dual carriageway 100 meters down the road, so it does feel a very lived-in garden with so many other people living around. And some of my highlights were green and great spotted woodpecker. Both came. One of my little garden specialities is the stock dove, the rather dainty little cousin of the wood pigeon. I've got several stock dove boxes up in the garden, and they have colonized the garden successfully. I've got 3 pairs in the garden. But I think what's quite telling is those birds that weren't on my list and I wouldn't expect. So I no longer expect chaffinch on the list, no longer expect greenfinch. They would have been regulars on my Big Garden Birdwatch list 10 years ago. I don't get starlings in the garden, which for so long, for the first 20 or so years of Big Garden Birdwatch, was always #1. And I didn't get 2 that I really, really hoped for. So over the course of this winter, I've been getting this particular, and this is a photo from my garden. This is a firecrest, the rarer cousin of the goldcrest. So I have a wintering firecrest that's visiting the garden, but didn't on Big Garden Birdwatch Day. But yes, isn't that a fabulous looking thing? I love its scientific name, which is Regulus ignicapilla, which is the flame-haired little king. So lives up to its name. And then the other bird that I was really hoping for, which is not a regular at all, but has been over the course of this winter, I've been getting a kestrel come into the garden, which has been visiting my mini pop-up meadows in the garden, which I think we'll have a little chat about later. But no, they were no shows, which is always the case, isn't it? People say, yeah, I have a bird and I really wanted it, I was expecting it, didn't come. There were my 2 big misses.
Yeah, we had a robin that left just before we started counting it, and we should have done what you did and just go, right, Robin's here now. This is where we begin. That's a nice shot of a kestrel. Let's think now about what we could be doing to start attracting birds in all year round, because obviously birds and wildlife aren't just for Big Garden Birdwatch weekend. We want them all the year round, and it's also not just about bird feeders. It's about building up the habitat to draw them in throughout the year. Let's take a look at some of what you've been doing, Adrian, to see if we can get some ideas.
Yeah, sure. And I've just popped together a few slides of things that you can most definitely do at this time of year. So top of my list is logs, and particularly sticks, because yeah, that was my log pile there, but sticks can be just as important within the garden. And many people say, well, I haven't got any logs. Doesn't matter. Any little pruning that you can gather together. My stick piles are much better for my grass snakes and my slow worms, but also for nesting wrens, dunnocks, blackbirds. Sticks, I think, are the underrated dead plant material in the garden. If you've got them, gold dust, use them, pile them up. But if you have got logs, I think if we move on to the next slide, there are some intriguing things that you can do with them. This is a German technique called Hugelkultur, where you actually pile up your logs and then you bury them under soil. So I've been doing some little experimentation with this. And what you do is not only do you get the rotting wood material, which is fabulous for my breeding stag beetles in the garden, because they burrow down, lay their eggs amongst rotting wood underground, and then the larvae live underground for 7 years, like this giant fat maggot underground, before the amazing adult comes out 4, 5, 6, 7 years later. But you also create topography in the garden, and we're so used in the garden to going flat. But when you go topography, you then got a sunny side, and you've got a shady side, and you've got those microclimates, and you've got the chance for things like solitary bees to burrow into the mound. So that's what I've been trying with my Hugelkultur. And then you can sow a wildflower seed mix over the top of that. So all sorts of things you can do with plant material, and pruning is still something that you can do at this time of year. You've probably got another 3 or 4 weeks to finish off any winter pruning. All of that really valuable for creating those little mini habitats.
Brilliant. Can I just ask about stag beetles? From memory, are they fairly geographically not widespread? Is it London and the southeast mostly, stag beetles these days?
Yes, tends to be, but that doesn't mean that other parts of the country don't have the chance of some wood-living beetles using these. So even though stag beetle is the big glamorous one of the family, there are plenty of other wildlife that can use it no matter where you are in the country. And that's one of the beautiful things about wildlife friendly gardening, in that what I do in my garden will attract a certain suite of things, but doing the same thing in Wales, up in Scotland, will bring in something totally different. And it's that diversity that really makes gardens special in a way that we never thought they were previously. It really has risen up the scale in terms of things you do in the garden have a genuine impact for nature conservation, and that's a beautiful thing for all of us to then take away and enact.
Nice bit of Hugelkultur there. So what I must say, if you've got any questions for Adrian, make the most of him being here. Pop me questions in the Q&A for any kind of wildlife gardening. What have you got in your garden? What would you like in your garden? Do ask us while we're here. Adrian, do carry on. What else have we got? Have we got more logs?
Oh,
water. This is
water.
crucial, isn't it? Absolutely
Yeah,
crucial.
yeah. And I threw these slides in. This one is a little test for you. Can you identify the bird that is splashing about in the bird bath? Because first step with water is just something to drink and something to bathe in for birds. And if we move on to the next slide, let's give you a little bit. So I probably should point out that the bird bath here is only about 2 inches deep. And thankfully, this little visitor that I couldn't see when it was splashing about popped out on the side of the bird bath. And there it is. It's a goldcrest, the commoner relative of the firecrest, having taken a full-on bath, it looks, from the state of its plumage there. I think I've always been so surprised at how many birds do come down and use water. Key thing with a bird bath for me is the ideal bird bath design is what I call a puddle on a stick. So the puddle meaning broad and shallow, and the stick bit of it means that goldcrest typically would be bathing in the dew up in the leaves. And it's that height that allows birds to feel safe when bathing is such a risky, perilous business. And that's why we in the RSPB sell our bird baths on pedestals a lot of the time. Obviously, if you've got an open area where birds can make a quick dash to cover, but at least can see all around them, that can still work on a lawn or indeed up on a balcony. But yeah, a puddle on a stick is the ideal to aim for. But obviously, if you can move on into actually putting in a pond, I've put this in not as a brag, but this is a little egret in my back garden in the middle of Sussex suburbia. I decided to go big and bold with the pond and made one as big as I could. But it is amazing how many little ponds are being visited by little egrets these days as they've spread across the country. Put a pond in, and the surprising visitors that you'll get, no matter how big or small it is. This is a Belfast sink pond that I've got in my garden. This still attracts damselflies. Haven't had a dragonfly to it, certainly haven't had a little egret to it, but nevertheless, the wildlife that comes to it, pond skaters and back swimmers and all sorts of mini invertebrate life, it's once you put those plants into a water source that you turn it from being a bathing and drinking place into a habitat in its own right. And I think I popped some photos in here. Oh, yeah, surprising visitors. So this was the pond frozen over last winter, not this winter, in which I got a little solar fountain running. And this sparrowhawk was clearly ever so eager for unfrozen water, to the point of going and standing on my solar fountain and really getting a blast from beneath. There aren't many places in nature where it could get an upward blast of water, but it clearly loved the chance to do this.
It's really quite special. I love that. I love that.
Notice
That's
how it's
ice underneath. So just a tiny little film of liquid water there.
So the solar panel creating this little jet of water was keeping an area of the pond free of ice. Notice how the sparrowhawk there is cleaning its head, having done its belly. It was a bedraggled beast once it's finished, but it was a happy, if undoubtedly cold, creature by the end of that. And this is just to illustrate putting in a pond. This is one of the ponds in my garden. I now have 8 in the garden because I'm greedy. Here's the basic method, which is dig out an area. This probably took about a day and a half to dig out because it's quite a large area, but hopefully gives people a sense. You could put in quite a small pond in just one day's activity. Lined with a bit of sand, then over goes the butyl liner, pull it into shape, pop in the water. I put in a little layer of gravel. I don't tend to put soil in the bottom of my ponds. All my pond plants go in little baskets. If you put in soil, then you've got the chance of large amounts of algae developing. That's on the same day as all those other photos with some turf put around the outside. And then I think the final photo on that series is, yeah, that's the pond in its first year. It's now developing all the aquatic plants within it. That's my canal beyond it. That is the official Sussex Canal in my mind. And then the birds that you get come down to the pond. Hopefully, I'll let you search around, viewers, with your eyes to find the 2 features of interest there. I put in a stick, called it my kingfisher stick, never expected to get a kingfisher in the middle of suburban Sussex. and yet kingfishers visited on several occasions. And as a drinking point for, I think probably what leapt out immediately, drinking point for foxes, but for so many different bird species, as well as mammals. It's just a constant source of delight.
I have a pond question for you, Adrian, since you're here. So I did a much smaller version of a wildlife pond in our much smaller garden a few years ago. So the same with the butyl lining. I may have put some soil in. I may have had algae issues. First few years, we had really successful dragonflies. So we had lots of kind of ovipositing, the laying of the eggs, and we had the joy of them hatching out and over the coming years. But now the pond is very, very clogged up with plants, and and it's just kind of silt and mud, and it's a wetland, it's a bog really, and I want to rescue it. What's the best thing to do about a pond rescue? Is there a strategy?
So I certainly have a strategy, but don't be too surprised if your dragonfly numbers boom and then go down. That seems to be very typical in a new water body. So many dragonfly species seem to seek out a young pond, seem to do best in that, and then the numbers stabilize out usually at a lower level. But I tend to try and ensure that the ponds have got about 2/3 plant cover, about 1/3 not. Although variety is always good in these things, don't take it as an absolute rule. I think the key to keeping a pond a healthy ecosystem, but not disturbing too much of what's going in there, everything that's already established, is a bit by bit approach. So don't worry about exact times of year, but just take bits of the plant life out over time. And I've done some work in my pond this year, took out some giant handfuls of stuff from the pond, enough to keep that 1/3 of the water surface open. I have bats swoop down and actually drink from the surface, so I need that open water top for it. But if you just do it in the gentle bit by bit way, it's more sustainable for you and more sustainable for the pond.
Sounds good to me. Sounds much easier, because I was stressing about this is going to be a major undertaking. 48 hours of stripping everything out, but yeah, I'll do it gently. And as you say, the peaks and troughs of dragonfly eggs laying shouldn't worry me too much.
I never stress about what's going on in the garden. It's an ever-changing world, and with a pond, when you put it in, I always say for the first 3 years, that's not a pond, that's a hole in the ground with some water in. It's going to take time to develop into a balanced ecosystem, and yeah, enjoy the process, watch it as it goes.
Thank you. Let's move on. What have we got next?
Nest boxes. Just because we're at that point in the year where birds are starting to seek out nest points, I thought I'd put up one of my, well, it's actually a kestrel box, but this is one of the boxes that the stock doves have taken over in the garden. So there are different designs of these large boxes. I do have some large trees in the garden, and I get in the experts up on their ropes, and I watch from a safe point down on the ground and enjoy their activities up there. And they're the ones who put up kestrel, stock dove, tawny owl boxes in the garden. But it's just to show that you don't have to stick to a blue tip box. You can go for something else. And then the surprise of what comes and uses these kind of boxes, you never know. It could be a squirrel that moves into it. First year of this one was a wood pigeon. Wood pigeons aren't known for nesting inside holes up on trees. This one would look out of this box with pure delight at its dry nest site that it had. But the stock doves have now claimed their right to holes in trees. I think the next slide I've got, this is a great tip box. So the size of hole so matters. It's about 26mm diameter for blue tit, their ideal, 29 for great tit, 32 for house sparrow. This house sparrow should not have fitted in to my 29mm hole. And you can see that the house sparrows had to squeeze themselves out and popped like a cork coming out of a champagne bottle each time they came out of and presumably into the box. But yeah, putting up a range of boxes is really important. And on the next slide, I think, yeah, here we've got some examples here. So left-hand side, we've got a house sparrow box. Next one up with a really wide hole, 45mm hole, is a starling box. And then we've got ones which can be used by jackdaws and stock doves. And then the really big one on the right-hand side is very typically a tawny owl box with the little perch on the right-hand side. Stock doves have moved into my tawny owl box. I love it. It's you put them up, you have a target, and then you see who actually moves in, who actually takes over. I have got in my garden, I think I'm up to 30 nest boxes, and they range from swift boxes to house martin cups. Then add in bat boxes as well. The habitat is really important. Must remember that these are just nursery holes. They're bedrooms in effect, where the youngsters can be raised. And just as you said earlier, Big Garden Birdwatch is all about putting in the habitats to get yourself ready for the Big Garden Birdwatch. Your count in January is in effect the result of the year that's preceded. Here was my most unexpected thing, tawny owl box. And you can see my tree men went up there, pulled away a bit of the ivy and said, "You've got organ pipes in your box." A feral colony of honeybees had moved in and created all the honeycomb right from the bottom to the top of the box. Never expected that in my tawny owl box. And with many species, you wouldn't want to put two boxes side by side. So two blue tip boxes side by side. You'll only get one pair. They'll choose the best that they do, and they'll defend the other one from all comers. But with house sparrow boxes, you can put up almost as many as you like. So here are 4 of my house sparrow boxes arranged on the wall. Above it is, you won't be able to see it in the picture, some house martin cups, and to the right of that, some swift boxes. House sparrows have moved into all of them, including the house martin cups, including the swift box.
Of course.
They're very welcome, because when I moved in, there was not a single house sparrow in the garden.
That's excellent. And this is really, really important, because we've talked about this over the last few sessions, that house sparrow consistently comes out as #1 in Big Garden Birdwatch, has done for the last 20 years, but that kind of masks the fact that those numbers have gone down dramatically. And what we do need to keep reminding ourselves of is that we need to be providing those homes, providing the hedges for them to shelter in, and as Adrian's doing here, lots and lots of nest holes. And remember, they are a communal nesting species.
Yeah, they love the presence of others. And I thought it wouldn't be right to talk about what you can do now. For me, this is the exciting thing as we turn into the new year. This is the point where growing something, I don't have a lot of money. I work for the RSPB, which is where growing things from seed is so useful. I'm constantly amazed that for like £2.50, buy a pack of seeds, and from it you can, if you nurture them, 50, 100 plants can come out of that single pack of seeds and can really begin to fill the spaces and create. Plants are at the bottom of so much of our food chain. From a plant-rich garden, that's where you're going to get an insect-rich garden, which is going to then develop into a wildlife-rich garden per se. So even for our house sparrows, we may think of them as seed eaters much of the year, but when they've got the youngsters, it's insects that they're looking for. They come into my vegetable patch and eat my aphids and rove all around the garden looking for insects to feed to their young. And it all starts with the plant life. And of course, through the plants, we've then got the wonderful chance to benefit our pollinators, all of the nectar supping species that we have. For bees, most of them are looking for nectar and pollen. For butterflies, for moths, they're looking for the nectar. And by choosing those plants really well and trying to fill that garden as much as possible with living plants, it's the bedrock of everything we do to make a wildlife friendly habitat. And all of those reserve managers out there for RSPB, they're gardening on a big scale. That's what they're doing. And again, for them, the bottom of the food chain is maybe a bed of heather or a bed of reeds or a woodland. It all starts with the plants.
Fantastic. Well, what have you got there, Edge? I'm curious. What's in there? What's in that mix?
Yes, I've got all sorts of stuff here. So on the left-hand side, I've got some seedlings of cowslips. I tend to often with cowslips just sow them live into my little mini pop-up meadows. Bottom right, we've most of it is cowslip there because I can't resist doing lots of stuff. Bottom right is a plant called betony, which is Latin name Stachys. Some viewers may grow Stachys byzantina, the lambsia, or this is Stachys officinalis, which is the native Stachys. You find it in woodlands. It's got a beautiful pink flower and it's beloved of bees, including things like the wool carder bee.
Am I right in thinking wool carder bee scrapes the hairy bits off the leaves, or is that?
It does indeed, which is why it loves lambsia, because those fluffy leaves, it's the carding is the old word for combing. So yeah, the female wool carder bee combs fluff in order to line her nesting chambers where she lays her eggs, provisions them with pollen. Then she'll die. The youngsters will never see their mother, but they'll emerge the following season with all the instincts in place of what they need to do. And they're a fabulous species to attract to a garden.
Lovely. Have we got any more plants or seedlings? Oh, mini meadows. I love a mini meadow.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do one myself here as well. So yeah, but interested in this one.
Now is the time to start to prepare. Your sowing point for mini meadows is typically April into the start of May, but now is the time to start preparing. When I say mini meadow, this is my maxi meadow within the garden. I'm so lucky to have a large area, but I have done experimental meadows, mini meadows, pop-up meadows through the garden. There's some of the seed mixes you get. And I love that point where you're just broadcasting seed. You're not having to do that nurturing pots. You're just broadcasting and then seeing what comes up from it. And it's really cheap to get a result from it. What I often do with a mini meadow, and some people think that this picture is a meadow. Now, to be absolutely clear here, what you're looking at is an annual mix. You're looking at a cornfield mix. It's not a meadow. So the word meadow comes from a word which means to mow. But what I do is I mix amongst my meadow mix. When I sow it for the first time, I put some annual flowers in. So in year one, I get this color burst effect, but then growing in amongst these fast growing rainbow effect of annual flowers, all the perennials that will form my mowable meadow are starting to germinate amongst them. So this beautiful color effect, and we've got corn chamomile here and corn marigold. This won't last year after year, but gives you a first year effect from it. After that point, it is a case of mowing the meadow. And I think a little bit further on, some of the creatures that you get from it. So these are 6-spot burnet moths, which have colonized my mini meadows in the garden because their caterpillars feed on bird's foot trefoil, which is such an essential ingredient. It's a food plant for the common blue butterfly, which is nowhere near as common as its name. There we go. I managed to put one here. Is a mating pair of common blue butterflies in my mini meadow. They'll have spotted, the female will have tasted with her feet that there is bird's foot trefoil in my meadow, made her think this is a place to stop, wait for a male to come through. They're mating, she'll then go and lay the eggs in the meadow and then create a colony. And this colonization, at first with a wildlife friendly garden, you're putting in features in the hope that something wanders through your garden, finds something it likes and stays. And this is the moment that we got here. A female and a male common blue have wandered through the garden when the meadow is still young. They found what they like. They think, yeah, this is the place to settle down, to lay eggs. And then you get this colonization where you're no longer relying on the wandering because you've created a home base, your own population of these creatures. And that's a beautiful thing to get to the point where I know I'm going to have my common blues and my 6-spot burnets because they're now part of my home, part of my community. I think if we move on to, here's my hugel culture going underneath the logs and getting sewn up with a wildflower meadow mix. So I've got all the benefit from my stag beetles of the rotting wood. And then on the next slide, I think we'll see that's the mound in its first year, having been sewn up with wild carrot and red campion. Red campion's actually pink, should be renamed in my book. Some poppies coming through there. And this is where I actually laid a bed of standard garden centre turf with nothing but grass in it. This is from B&Q. That's B&Q turf laid there. Can I make a mini meadow out of that? So I let it grow for the first year and the grasses grow and there's nothing else in it whatsoever. And then the technique with creating a mini meadow is to mow it really hard. You could do this in spring or you could do it in autumn. And what that does is just open up some gaps to allow you to scatter some meadow seed over it. This isn't your cornfield annuals at this point. This is your perennials, your meadow cranesbills and your bird's foot trefoils, the things that will create a meadow in amongst the grasses. Sow it, and then a lot of cowslips went in here, buttercups, you can see the buttercups here. And then it turns from being just pure monoculture of grass into my count for this year, as in last year's growing season, which was the 3rd year of this mini meadow, was 30 different plant species within it, and then grasshoppers, common blue butterflies, gatekeeper butterflies, damselflies as they emerge from the pond come and rest in amongst the grass blades. And You can see the bird bath there that the goldcrest was bathing in, and you can see also that I mow. This is called my square meadow. It's an overground term, but it just makes it look intended. Everybody who comes can see the square meadow is meant to be there.
When did you sow? What time of year do you need to sow for this sort of thing?
So with a mini meadow, with a pop-up meadow, you can either go April or May, or you can go September, October. It doesn't matter. There are some plants such as cowslip which need to overwinter as a seed before they'll germinate. So those kind of things are best sown in autumn. And likewise with yellow rattle, the meadow maker, that special plant whose roots tap into the grasses and reduce the vigor, that has to be sown in autumn because that needs a winter to awaken the seed. But I'll be sowing my mini meadow in April this year, my latest one, and then I shall add some yellow rattle seed come September, October time. So these are things that you can continue to develop, and if you want something else in there over time, you can pop some plug plants in, or scrape another little patch and put some more seed in, and just watch it evolve over time. And like a pond, it isn't a meadow in year one. It's an evolving habitat that's still got to balance itself out. And in the first year, you'll probably get a flush of one plant species, and that will get overtaken by something in future years. And again, I don't stress. I just watch to see what comes with fascination.
Lovely. Now, Chris has asked us a question, but I think you've answered it. So Chris asked for tips for turning a small patch of lawn into a mini meadow, and I think you've just beautifully illustrated it. So Chris, I hope that's answered your question. But do drop us another line if you've got any follow-ups. What else have we got in your? I know you've got. What else have we got? You've got loads. You've got feeding birds as well on top of all that.
Yes. So I've just put this in as a little final slide for you here, which is it's very easy at this point of year as the days get longer and we get milder temperatures to think that the birds must be having it easy in the way that we're now having it easy. We're not having to pull on the thermals, therefore times must be good for the birds. And yet we now know that we're heading towards the hungry gap, which is actually at the very point that birds are having to make nests, lay eggs, the males are having to sing. It's a very energy demanding point of year. And yet all of last year's seed is now depleted. There are very few insects that have yet emerged at this point of year. So it's just that message to keep on feeding, even if you think surely the good times are coming. They are, but we need to help birds get into condition for the breeding season. So yeah, keep them clean, of course. That hygiene message that Indy was talking about earlier is so important. The reason why I've got no chaffinches and greenfinches in my garden, we think, is because of that trichomoniasis that has been rampaging around the country. So weekly, I like to clean my feeders weekly, and I like to move them to different locations around the garden. I recognize that's more difficult in a small garden, but at least having 2 points that you can move the feeders between so they're in one position 1 week, across to another the next, helps just reduce that chance of transmission of disease. I will just say, in response to Chris's question, so on behalf of the RSPB, I'm doing a webinar on Thursday evening on the 1st for the Wildlife Gardening Forum. It's free to join it, so just pop online, Google Wildlife Gardening Forum, and you'll be able to find an hour-long session about creating mini meadows.
Well, thanks, Adrian. And actually, if we can dig that link out, pop it in the chat, maybe, just to share that.
Brilliant.
That'd be really useful. All right, thank you so much, Adrian. We'll come back to you a little bit later on. I'm going to cut over to Indy now, back in Sherwood Forest. Indy, thank you. Oh, there we are. Oh my goodness, live on location. Can you tell us a little bit about why you're there today? I know you volunteer there, is that right?
Yes, so I've been volunteering here since I was 14. And yeah, I'm on the practical conservation work party today, which is my favorite thing out of everything. It's always my highlight of the week. And we're working just somewhere over in that direction. And today we're basically doing what we pretty much do every winter, which is cutting trees, which sounds a bit counterproductive to what you think we ought to be doing. But obviously creating habitat is really important. You know, it's the climate and biodiversity crisis. So we need to try and do our best. And yeah, when we first started working here, when the RSPB took over on Budby Heath, the northern section of Sherwood, we had maybe 1, maybe 2 individual nightjars. But our surveys last year showed that we had nearly 12. Well, I think it was maybe even 13 individuals. And that's just thanks to the glade creation and just opening up of certain areas that are just being dominated by regenerating birch and pine, keeping those sections open. And we've noticed that from the surveys, we haven't got many nightjars on the east side of the reserve. So that's what we're doing today, is opening up a few dense birch belts to hopefully allow some nightjars and just creating a bit more of a natural boundary between some of the woodland edges and the heathland. So we've got some really nice sections of heathland here as well, which is really nice. I think just creating a bit of a nice merge and not sort of like heathland woodland. It's sort of like heathland woodland, a bit of a nice buffer zone. So yeah, that's what we're up to today. It's good fun.
Fantastic. And then what are you looking forward to next in the sort of nature calendar? Because we've got things like birdsong's going to start. Well, I'd say birdsong's going to start soon. I've already got robin singing here. I don't know about what's already starting to show for us, but there's a lot to look forward to in the coming months, isn't there?
Absolutely. I cycled here this morning. I live not too far away, and I stopped off at the top of the reserve. And I feel quite smug about this because I'm quite excited. Um, but there's a great little bird called a woodlark that looks very similar to a skylark, and it's my favourite bird song. It's my favourite. No rivals. Nightingale's all right. Woodlark is superb. And I stopped off at the top because they sing, kind of early February, into March and a little bit throughout the season. I thought it's pretty mild today. I'll just stop and see if I can hear any. I stopped, and there's a bird that caught my eye, and I got my binoculars on it, and it was a great grey shrike, and it was just sat on a little pine tree next to me. So that was very exciting. And then shortly after, it flew over my head, and I got a selfie with it, which is on Twitter. And then all of a sudden after that, I heard some woodlarks, and I was still hearing them a couple of minutes ago. So yeah, really looking forward to, I think, the whole orchestra of birds that we get, especially in Sherwood with woodpeckers and the red starts returning soon. But I've got to say, I'm a big fan of the cooler weather. I don't like anything over 19 degrees. I just begin to melt and I just retreat indoors or just any cool area. So I must admit, I'm very much enjoying having quite white fingers at the moment. But it's really nice. But yeah, I think just looking forward to seeing everything waking up, and yeah, definitely feel very, very inspired, and got to say very jealous after Adrian's presentation just then. What a garden he's got! I didn't realize. That's astonishing. So I've got some plans now as well.
Yeah, my head's full of ideas as well. And the other thing I was thinking while you're there is it's probably worth us highlighting to RSPB members that are watching that these are your nature reserves to visit. So Sherwood is a sort of it's a partnership, isn't it, Sherwood? How does it work?
Nobody knows. So RSPB took over from Nottinghamshire County Council in 2018, who used to manage it. But before then, it was the MOD, the military, used to use it as a training base. And so, yeah, before any work that we do here, we have to what's it called? Magnetometer, which is basically like a fancy metal detector, and detect for any old blank bullet casings and things like that before we do any scrapes for solitary bees, for example. But yes, the RSPB managed the site, but it's owned by Thorsby Estate, which is the tree line you can see just there. And yes, the RSPB has done a really, really good job managing Budby Heath and Sherwood, which are both connected. And it's,
So if I
really,
want to
really
come
good.
as a visitor and I want to come and try and see some of these sort of red starts and things, when's a good time to come, and what are my chances? What else might I see if I come along in say early spring?
Yeah, really good. So I think when did I think it's normally May, I'd say. I think around the time, the International Dawn Chorus Day, which I think is like the first few days of May, and the first and usually the fourth, I think. And yeah, there's a whole range of birds here that we get in the spring and summer, some really good African migrants. So yeah, in the car park, then make your way up through the visitor centre and then out towards the northern end of the Sherwood Forest area. It really starts to open up a bit more because we've got a bit of a mosaic of habitats within the forest. So some more dense bits with scrubs, which are really good for warbler. And then the more we go up, it opens out a bit more into woodland glades. And that's where it starts to get really good for red starts. Tree pipits, spotted flycatchers, we've got a really good number of. What else have we got? Lesser spotted woodpeckers. They are unfortunately, as the story is across the UK, they're on the decline. But we did have a pair trying to nest here last year, so hopefully they're still here. And yeah, and obviously that then makes your way. If you keep going north, you'll get to Budby, and we've got all the woodlarks, stonechats, nightjars, some really nice stuff. It's honestly, you can't not see stuff when you come here. It's great.
So yeah, that's our recommendation. Get out and enjoy RSPB nature reserves. They're your nature reserves. Sherwood Forest is the one we're at today. So why not try visiting this year and see if you can see some of those amazing singers and spring migrants as they arrive. Thank you, Andy. We'll come back to you at the end. I'm going to go over to Alistair now to hear a little bit about local groups, because that's another great joy of being an RSPB member. You don't have to be a member to join a local group, but it is a huge benefit that you have this group of like-minded people you can join in with. Over to you, Alistair.
Thank you very much, Jamie. You've said most of what I was going to say there. Hello, everybody. My name is Alistair. I'm one of the local groups development officers in England with the RSPB. I help to look after our local community groups in the north of England. And at the moment, I also work with our groups in Northern Ireland. And let's just quickly have a look at what are local groups. Well, they are volunteer groups. They're run by volunteers. They work out in the local community. They've been going for over 50 years now. They've been going since 1969. And we have groups all over the country. Just have a look, show you where they are. We've got 130 local groups in the UK. I think our most southerly group is in Guernsey, down in the Channel Islands. We've got one up in Inverness in the Highlands, and they stretch from Canterbury in Kent right out to Fermanagh in Northern Ireland. So a huge number of them. And to give you an idea of what they actually do, we'll go back to that foundation. 1969 they started. So a few years ago, for the 50th anniversary, we thought we'd try and compile some statistics to let people know what groups had done in that time. And it was quite astonishing. We realised that they'd raised over £25 million for the RSPB to help in our work to save nature. They'd given over 12 million hours of volunteering, which you can't put a price on that. They'd led over 120,000 guided walks, wildlife walks and nature walks for people, had over 80,000 indoor meetings where they had presentations about wildlife and conservation. They've gone out and gone to schools and community groups and all sorts of engagement activities. And we have some groups that are really actively involved in conservation work themselves, not just on reserves. They do things in their local communities. Things like swift box schemes, or rewilding schemes on local bits of land. So a huge range of things that our different groups do. But I think what we're talking about here is following up on the Big Garden Birdwatch and actually just being able to go out and get involved in birds. And the writer Simon Barnes, a few years ago, wrote a wonderful book called How to Be a Bad Birdwatcher. And he said, bird watching is easy. Look out the window, see a bird, enjoy it. You're now a bird watcher. And I'm a great believer in that. You don't have to be an expert to get involved. You just want to have the interest and the enthusiasm. And if you've got that, you will go out and you will learn. And groups are a really great place to do that. Lots of our groups actually run birding events for beginners, actual specific events for people to come along who've got no experience of birding at all. And others, if they're having outings, if they're going to reserves or to local nature sites, they will assign a birding buddy to new people. So there's somebody there that can help them. So there's never any need to feel embarrassed about, oh, I don't know enough. This is how you learn. Everyone has to start somewhere. So lots of the groups do run regular birding walks and trips to reserves, to RSPB reserves and other sites. Some of them even run cruises. We have cruises that happen in Lincolnshire and Yorkshire. Our Liverpool local group helped to run a cruise on the Mersey ferry, where we get 350 people going right out into Liverpool Bay to see all the wildlife there. We just have to hope nobody's got on thinking they're making a 5-minute trip across to the Wirral, because they're in for a bit of a shock. But that's a fantastic event. Those happen all over the country. And the indoor talks, most groups have a talk once or twice a month. They get speakers from all over the place talking about all sorts of aspects of birding and conservation. Quite a few of our groups run Zoom talks. So in the winter, when the weather's a bit miserable, they'll run Zoom talks. We've had live talks from America about conservation. We had one group had the RSPB staff member in the Falklands was talking to them live on Zoom. And we've even had one group who had a talk live from Australia, at the end of which the speaker put on one of those GoPro video cameras and took them out around the bush to see what local Australian birds there were. So it really is a fantastic way of getting involved in birding, especially if you don't have a local RSPB reserve. You can still become involved with the RSPB through the local group. So how do you find your local group? if you go to the website, to rspb.org.uk, and if you follow the links about supporting the RSPB and getting involved, you'll find information there. As with most things, probably the quickest thing you can do is just Google RSPB local groups. You'll get through to the map showing where they all are, and you'll be able to find information there and link to the local group website. All the groups have got their own websites. Most of them are on, social media, Facebook and Twitter and so on. And then you can get involved, go along to a meeting, join a walk, and volunteer. Our groups are run entirely by volunteers. We have 1,700 people in England running our 115 local groups, and we're always keen for more people to get involved. It's a fantastic way to learn about birds. It's a lovely way to meet, some like-minded people. We talk a lot on the RSPB about saving nature through people, which we have to do. We need communities to be involved, and local groups are part of that. But at the same time, sometimes we save people through nature, that social connection, that realization there are other people that have your interests and your passions can be a fantastic thing. So please look it up, get involved with your local group, and have a fantastic time birding. Thank you.
Thank you, Alistair. Always so inspiring to hear about the work of local groups. And I was very lucky to visit the Worcester and Malvern local group a short time ago, just to find out the kind of things that they do. And we've got a little film to show you now, just a couple of minutes long. And I think it's a really nice example of one of our local groups. Let's go to the film.
We're the Worcester and Malvern RSPB local group. We have 200 members, and we do our conservation projects, which we're very proud of. We have 9 of those. We also do monthly meetings. We have monthly visits to RSPB reserves, and we do birdie walks as well. It's very active and very friendly.
Today we're putting up swift boxes, which is one of the projects we have. Swifts are struggling like many birds, and one of the ways we can help them is putting up swift nest boxes. It increases the number of nesting sites that they have available to them. Another thing we do to try to help swifts is to talk to local builders and get them to put swift bricks in their new builds. The local community has been remarkably interested. I started off last year by printing out a letter which I posted to people in my street, and out of 65 letters which I just pushed through people's doors, about 30 people actually said that they were interested in helping swifts in one way or another. That's a really heartening sign of the level of interest that people have these days in these sort of things. And I've had the same sort of thing this year on a nearby housing estate, which is really very heartening.
It's wonderful being part of a group that actually loves nature the way I do, and we're able to go out. So for instance, if it's cold and wet and you feel, oh, I don't want to go out there, but if there's a group going out there and we've got a trip happening, then that's what's really lovely. And we have great fun on the bus, and then we get there and we normally have coffee, but we really enjoy that togetherness.
People want to do something for nature, and we allow them to do something for nature. Through us and the projects that we run, we can actually be a catalyst for people being active out there, working for our natural world. It makes a huge difference. We are so much bigger as a group than our individual parts. I would recommend anybody to get involved in their local RSPB group.
What do you think of that? It's so inspiring, isn't it?
They're a fantastic. We've got so many fantastic groups, and one of the things I always say is that our local groups put the S into RSPB, the society. They really are in that original spirit in which the society started, of just people wanting to do something, wanting to make a change. We have about 1,200 staff in the RSPB, but we have about 12,000 volunteers. They're 85% of our workforce. And involving people like that, as Nick says in that presentation, I think a lot of people do want to feel that they can do something. And in this way, they can become involved and be part of the RSPB, part of our work. And also, as he says, genuinely have a really good time. The number of group outings I go on or meetings I go to and come away just, killing myself laughing or having had a great evening. It really is a fantastic way to spend time for nature and people.
Thoroughly recommended. Thanks, Alistair. Indeed, there's another way that younger people can get involved as well, which is the RSPB Youth Council. We're getting a bit close to the end, but can you very quickly tell us about that and what we're looking for at the moment for the Youth Council?
Yes, absolutely. So the RSPB Youth Council is a really great group of people that I'm lucky enough to be a member of, have been for a little while. And we are currently have a few vacancies. So we're looking for anybody. I think anyone under the age of 20, between 16 and 24, I think is the age number. But yeah, the link will be posted in the chat for that. But if you're interested, please do apply. We've really started making some progress, working internally with the RSPB and attending events and shouting about the great work they do and coming up with projects and all sorts of genuinely really, really good stuff with a really honest, lovely, knowledgeable, brilliant, fun group of people. And we go on some great outings as well. So if you want to apply, please do join us. The link's in the chat.
Thank you. And if you're not aged 16 to 24, but you know someone who is and might be interested, please do pass the link on to them. I'm going to invite everyone back onto the screen now. I've got one quick question, which is actually for Adrian. So this is from Sarah, who says, "What you've done in your garden is so inspiring." Now Sarah's got a large mature plot in North Yorkshire, quite formal, but Sarah wants to increase the biodiversity and will definitely copy some of your ideas. Have you published any information about your garden? Is there anywhere that she can see more photos? She wants to steal ideas from you. As many as possible.
Yeah. So a lot of the photos from the early years of the garden are in the RSPB Gardening for Wildlife book, available from every good RSPB shop near you. And I did do a blog for 10 years, and those are still live on the RSPB website, I think, although we've been undergoing a web transformation lately. So I'd start with the book, and if we can find that the links to the blog are still live, hopefully we'll be able to post them into the chat.
So it's Gardening for Wildlife book. I don't know if Claire or Hayley from the events team, whether you've got a moment to dig that one out. That would be really helpful. I've had a quick look, but I can't see it straight away. I'm pretty sure it's on our online shop.
It is. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, there's no other questions coming through. So while we're just waiting to see if we get any last minute questions, I will just say that we have got another webinar lined up. Well, we have many more lined up, but the next one is going to be on the 22nd of February. And that's on gull ID, because gulls can be very tricky. They're all black and white and they've got similar markings. But winter, we're still in winter in February, is a good time to go out and try and pay them some attention as they'll be gathering in flocks looking for food. So join me and Luke Phillips for that one. That's 22nd of February, 12 noon, and we'll pop the link for that one in the chat as well so that you can register. Again, it's an RSPB member event, so you will need your membership number to hand. Okay, any more questions coming through? No more questions. This is good, but I think we've said quite a lot today.
Jamie, could I just say the firecrest has just flown past my window. The one that didn't turn up for Big Garden Birdwatch has just passed outside my window.
We're having quite a day of it, aren't we? Shrikes and firecrest. It's all going on.
Can I add it in, Jamie? Am I allowed to?
I don't think you can. Have you uploaded your results, Adrian?
I haven't. No. But I'm sticking to my hour. I'm happy with my heron.
I think you should. So yeah, as a reminder, please do, if you've taken part in Big Garden Birdwatch, please do upload your results to the website. Okay, well, in that case, I'd like to say a big thank you to all our speakers today. Indy, Alistair and Adrian, thank you so much for giving up your time and your expertise this morning. Hayley and Claire, keeping everything running smoothly in the background. Thank you. And also thank you all for watching and sticking with us all the way through. Thank you for all your questions. And bigger thank you for being an RSPB member, because without you, we couldn't do any of the work that we do here. All the nature reserves, the local groups, everything that happens because of you. Do join us again. There will be a survey popping up at the end of this session. Please do give us your feedback. We always like to hear from you. And yeah, hope to see you all soon. Thank you and goodbye.